My name is Levi Miller. I've been keeping animals on this land for going on 40 years now. Dogs, barn cats, a couple of goats that think they're dogs too. In all that time, there's one question I get asked more than any other. Why do the fleas keep coming back? I want you to sit with that question for a second. Most people never actually answer it. They just keep buying whatever's on the shelf at the feed store. They spray it, watch it work for 2 weeks, and then watch the fleas come back. That's not bad luck. That's not a bad product necessarily. That's a misunderstanding of what a flea actually is, and where it actually lives. Once you understand that, the fix costs about $1. It's sitting in your kitchen cabinet or your garden shed right now. I know that sounds like a big claim. My own father used to say, if it sounds too easy, somebody's lying to you, or you haven't looked close enough yet. So let me show you my hands. It's the way my grandfather walked me through it. I was maybe 9 years old, standing in the yard with a coffee can and a doubtful look on my face. Here's the thing nobody tells you about fleas. When you see one on your dog, that flea is maybe 5% of the real population. The other 95% is eggs, larvae, and pupae. And they are not on your dog at all. They are in your yard. They're in the shady spots under your porch, in the mulch by your flower beds, in the cracks of your doghouse, anywhere your animal likes to lay down and rest. A single female flea can lay upwards of 40 eggs a day. Those eggs don't stick to fur. They just roll right off wherever the dog happens to be standing. So you can bathe your dog every single day. You can spray every commercial flea product on the market. None of it touches that hidden population sitting in your grass. That's why the fleas keep coming back. Messenger and ignoring the station. My grandmother figured this out before anybody had a fancy name for it. She just knew you had to go after the ground, not just the dog. What she used, what our family has used for generations, isn't a secret potion. It's food-grade diatomaceous earth, mixed with water, and a drop of natural dish soap to help it stick. That's it. That's the whole spray. Now let me explain what that actually is. I don't like giving instructions without giving understanding. My daughter-in-law says I explain things longer than I need to. Bear with an old man for a minute. Diatomaceous earth comes from the fossilized remains of tiny water creatures. They're called diatoms, ground down into a fine powder. Under a microscope, that powder looks like broken glass, full of sharp edges. But it's not toxic like glass, and it's not poison. It doesn't work like a chemical at all. It works because those sharp edges cut through an insect's waxy shell. Once that shell is compromised, the insect dries out and dies. It's a physical process, not a chemical one. That matters because fleas cannot build resistance to it over time. Glass doesn't care how tough your grandchildren's fleas are. It cuts the same way every time. Here's the part that matters most for families with pets and little ones. Food-grade diatomaceous earth is safe. It's sometimes used to protect stored grain. In small amounts, it's even used in some food products. It is not the same as the diatomaceous earth used in pool filters. I want to be very clear about that difference. Pool-grade stuff has been heat-treated. It is not something you want near your animals or your children. You want the bag that says food grade, right there on the label. That's the only kind that belongs in this recipe. Once you have that, this is safe enough to let a toddler stand near while you spray. Walk through it without you worrying for a second. So here's how we make it. I'll walk you through it just like I'd walk my own grandson through it. You'll need a gallon of water, about 2 cups of food-grade diatomaceous earth, and a small squirt, maybe a teaspoon, of natural liquid dish soap. Nothing fancy. The soap isn't there to kill anything. It's there to break the surface tension of the water. So the diatomaceous earth doesn't clump up and separate. It stays suspended long enough to coat the grass and soil evenly. Any garden sprayer will do the trick. The kind you'd use for weed killer or fertilizer. The kind that costs a few dollars at any hardware store. Most folks already have one hanging in the shed. Mix it well, and I mean well. Diatomaceous earth wants to settle to the bottom. If you don't stir it or shake the sprayer every few minutes, it separates. You'll end up spraying mostly water toward the end, and mostly powder in the beginning. One does you much good on its own. Now, where you spray matters just as much as what you're spraying. Don't waste your time soaking the whole yard evenly. Fleas are creatures of shade and moisture. They don't like direct sun. So you go straight for the places your dog rests. The shaded spots under bushes, along the fence line, under the porch, around the doghouse. Any low, damp corner where the sun doesn't reach past noon. That's where the eggs and larvae are hiding. That's where this spray needs to go. Let it dry before you let the animals back into that area. Usually takes about an hour, depending on your weather. Once it's dry, that's when it goes to work. It keeps working as long as it stays dry. Rain will wash it away. So this isn't a one-and-done deal. You'll want to reapply after a heavy rain. Maybe once a week during the worst of flea season. Around here, that's the warm, wet months of late spring through early fall. Something my grandfather told me. I think about it every single time I mix up this spray. He said, "Son, the easiest fix is usually the one people trust the least. Because they've been taught that easy and cheap means it doesn't work." He wasn't wrong about that. I've had neighbors look at me sideways over this. I told them a bag of powder could do what a $40 bottle couldn't. I've been doing this for 4 decades. The proof isn't in what I tell you. It's in what happens in your own yard 2 weeks from now. Let me tell you about my neighbor Sarah. This is the story that convinced half our road to switch over. She had 2 dogs, both of them just miserable with fleas every summer, scratching until they bled in places. She'd tried 3 different name-brand treatments. The drops you put on the back of the neck, the collars. She'd even had the yard professionally sprayed once. That cost her more than I care to say out loud. Past a month. I brought her over a gallon of this mixture on a Saturday morning, told her where to spray it, told her to reapply after rain. Didn't think much more about it. About 3 weeks later, she stopped me at the mailbox, told me her dogs hadn't scratched themselves raw in weeks. She'd actually gotten down on her knees in the grass to check, pulled a white sock up over her pant leg the way you're supposed to. Came up with nothing. Not one flea. She thought I was going to tell her some secret ingredient I'd left out. I told her the truth. There wasn't one. It was just water, powder, and a little patience. That's usually how it goes. People expect a trick, and there isn't one. There's just an understanding of where fleas actually live and breed, and a willingness to treat that instead of chasing the symptom. I do want to give you a word of caution here. I never like to give advice without also giving you the full picture. Diatomaceous earth is safe for pets and children when it's food grade. Applied outdoors and allowed to dry before anyone walks through it. You don't want your dog inhaling large clouds of the dry powder directly. This spray method, wetting it into the ground, is the safer approach. Especially in a household with animals who sniff at everything. Which, let's be honest, is every dog I've ever known. If you ever use the dry powder indoors for other pests, apply it lightly. Keep animals away until it's worked into carpet fibers rather than loose. I also want to mention, because people always ask, this spray won't touch fleas already established deep in carpet or bedding. That's a different battle. It calls for washing bedding in hot water weekly and vacuuming thoroughly, which pulls up the eggs sitting in the fibers. The yard spray handles the outdoor breeding ground. That's where the real infestation lives, and where most people never look. Handle both, the indoor cleaning and the outdoor spray. And you're not just knocking fleas back for a few weeks, you're breaking the cycle where it actually starts. Now, some of you are going to ask why I don't just use a stronger chemical, something that kills on contact and gets it done. I understand the appeal of that, truly I do, especially when you're at your wit's end with a scratching dog. But those stronger chemicals build resistance over time. The same way bacteria build resistance to antibiotics when overused. Every season, the flea populations that survive are the toughest ones, the ones the chemical didn't kill. And they're the ones breeding the next generation. You end up needing something stronger every single year, just to get the same result. Diatomaceous earth doesn't work that way. It's a physical mechanism, not a chemical one. So there's no evolving around it. A flea can't grow a thicker shell in one generation. Why our family has stuck with this method for so long. Going back to my great-grandmother's time, long before there was a spray bottle with a fancy label. I'll also say this because I think it matters. There's a whole industry built around convincing you pest control is complicated. It has to come in a bottle with ingredients you can't pronounce. It has to cost you real money every single month. For some problems, sure, you need something more specialized. But for the everyday flea problem most families deal with every summer, the answer has been sitting in a bag of food-grade diatomaceous earth. It costs about $8 for a bag that makes gallons and gallons of spray. Enough to treat your yard for the entire season, and then some. If you try this, and I hope you do, give it 2 to 3 weeks. Nothing in nature works instantly. Not this, not anything worth doing. The eggs already in the ground will still hatch on their own timeline. Two fleas try to establish themselves, the powder is waiting. The population collapses from the ground up, not just knocked down for a week. I know this sounds almost too simple to be the whole answer. I understand if part of you is waiting for the catch. There isn't one. My grandmother didn't have anything else to reach for. Neither did her mother before her. Somehow the dogs on this farm have never needed a chemical collar, or a monthly pill to keep the fleas away. Just water, a little powder, a garden sprayer, and going after the source. Instead of the symptoms sitting on your dog's back. If you've got a flea problem this summer, start in that shaded corner. The spot where your dog likes to lay in the afternoon. That's usually where it all begins. That's exactly where you should end it too. Now let me walk you through a few variations. Not every yard is the same, and not every dog is the same. This tells me people have questions I didn't cover the first time. If you've got a small dog, low to the ground and living in the grass all day, you don't need to change the recipe at all. But pay closer attention to the areas right along the ground. Not just where they lie down, but where they walk most often. Small dogs pick up fleas from brushing against grass at nose height. That's ankle height for the rest of us. Treat a slightly wider strip along their regular walking paths. If you've got a bigger dog, one that digs out a cool spot in the dirt, look for those dugout hollows specifically. A dog digs the same hollow over and over because the cool soil feels good. That repeated contact with bare earth draws fleas. Spray that hollow directly, let it dry, and check back in a week. For folks dealing with cats instead of dogs, the approach shifts a little. Outdoor cats range much further than a fenced-in dog would. Every square foot of ground a cat might wander through. Focus on the specific resting spots instead. Cats are creatures of habit even outdoors. They return to the same 3 or 4 favorite spots again and again. Under a bush, on top of a woodpile, in a sunny patch by the shed. Watch where your cat naturally goes for a day or two before you spray. Treat those specific locations rather than the whole property. For gardens and flower beds, you might be more careful about what you use. Food-grade diatomaceous earth is something gardeners already use on purpose. It handles slugs, aphids, and other soft-bodied pests the same way. Through that same physical drying action, not any chemical poison. Spraying it in a flower bed won't hurt your tomatoes or your marigolds. You might even notice fewer other pests bothering your garden that season. I want to address a question people write to me about often. How this compares to cedar oil sprays or vinegar sprays. I'm dismissing them. I just want to be honest about where they fall short. Vinegar and essential oil sprays work as repellents. They make the area smell unpleasant to a flea, and it moves along. At least for a little while, until the smell fades. Usually within a day or two outdoors as wind and rain carry it away. That's not nothing, but it's not the same as killing the population. Diatomaceous earth doesn't repel fleas, it kills them. It keeps killing new ones as they hatch, for as long as it stays dry. That's the difference between chasing a problem away and solving it. I got a letter a while back from a fellow up north. He said he'd tried the spray but wasn't seeing results fast enough. Turned out he'd been spraying his whole lawn evenly, sun and shade both. Using up his whole batch on areas fleas don't even like. Direct sunlight is about the least hospitable place for a flea egg. Once he aimed the same amount of spray at the shaded resting spots. He wrote back within 2 weeks saying it was like flipping a switch. Same recipe, same dog, same yard. Just aimed at the right ground instead of spread thin over the wrong ground. That's the kind of mistake I see most often, honestly. People treat the whole yard like it's uniformly infested. In reality, flea populations cluster tightly around resting spots. Shade and moisture, that's where they gather. Understanding that concentration is half the battle. You could use twice as much spread evenly and still get worse results, compared to a small amount concentrated exactly where it's needed. I also get asked how long a batch keeps, whether you can mix a big container and let it sit for future use. My advice is to mix only what you'll use that day. Once diatomaceous earth is wet, it starts to lose some of its structure. Those sharp edges soften as the mineral breaks down in water. Dry powder, on the other hand, can sit sealed in your shed for years without losing any effectiveness. Buy the bag, keep it dry and sealed, and mix a fresh batch each time. It only takes a few minutes to stir together. It's not worth losing potency just to save that bit of prep time. One more thing I'll leave you with. I think it's the most important part of this whole conversation. Even more than the recipe itself. Fleas thrive in yards that are damp, shaded, and cluttered. Piles of leaves, stacked wood, thick, unmowed grass along the fence line. The spray does the heavy lifting, but keeping your yard mowed does more to prevent fleas in the first place. Clearing leaf litter away from the house helps too. Letting sunlight reach as much of the ground as you reasonably can. That does more than any spray, mine included, could do after the fact. My grandfather used to say, "Prevention is just good sense wearing work boots." Who wasted words, so I've never forgotten it. I've been doing this a long time now, long enough to watch my own grandchildren ask me the same questions. Standing in that same yard, looking at me like I might be pulling their leg. I'm not. This works because it goes after where the problem actually lives, not just where you happen to see it. Water, food-grade diatomaceous earth, a drop of dish soap, and a sprayer. That's the whole secret, and it was never really a secret at all. Just something forgotten somewhere between my grandmother's generation and the shelves of the modern pet store. Try it in your own yard, give it those 2 weeks, spray again after a good rain. Pay attention to those shaded resting spots more than anywhere else. And if you've got a trick your own grandparents used to swear by, one that's been passed down the same way this one has, I'd genuinely like to hear about it. Because that's how these things stay alive.